Thank you very much for inviting us, first of all, here to SRCC. This is the second time I've come here, and both the times I get very intimidated, largely because of what I hear about cut-offs. And given where I come from, that's, it almost seems surreal to be in an environment where so many of you have done so well. Also, interestingly, SRCC, and I mentioned that in my book, which, let me do a bit of marketing, is available outside and I'll sign after the event. SRCC is a critical part because this is where, in a way, Mr. Modi's campaign for the 2014 elections actually began. So every time I come here, I get a sense of that day in a way that, and maybe we had Ms. Sitharaman, if I am not mistaken, that evening on a show to explain the outreach that the BJP had towards the younger generation. I also want to say before we start that perhaps the easiest request to make to me is to interview Ms. Sitharaman, because I have high regard for her, and as someone who I believe is genuinely interested in wrestling with issues, which is not too often among our politicians of today. I'm going to start by keeping this as open as possible. I believe we have exactly 40 minutes. And we will start by getting Ms. Sitharaman to make some opening remarks, maybe more specific ones, and then get the audience to respond with questions. So I'm going to start with, ma'am, asking you the big question. This is budget month. It's February 2016. Would I be right in saying that this budget is now make or break for your government? Because, you're entitled to get your first one, it's like a first century or class one. You can get some things wrong. You can't get it wrong this time. Many believe that the 2015 budget, could have perhaps was a missed opportunity. Do you believe that the 2016 budget, ma'am, is a make or break budget, or am I being unfair?
Rajdeep, I thought we were starting off with startups. Never mind.
So is this the startup budget?
In a sense, it could be the startup budget because it's going to say so much about startups per se. But then, I'm a bit disappointed. Coming from Rajdeep, 2 years have passed, this budget will have to be a make or break. What do you mean? Every budget that has been given by this government led by Shri Modi has made a mark. You may want to not believe in it, because somewhere you have a list of, probably you meaning a lot of thinking people may have a list of, this is my wish list, I want Mr. Modi to do this, and Mr. Jaitley to say it in the budget in this fashion. But I think it's very clear the kind of steps which have been announced in the first budget of 2014, which was not a complete budget, and again in 2015, have all led to retaining India as the consistently growing economy, an economy which is growing at more than 7%, which is the only one growing at that kind of a level, with China sliding. We're the only one on a growing trajectory. And for us to be told, will you give us an interesting and a big budget this time? Every budget that has been given has led to sustaining India on that trajectory with inflation controlled and indications about how more transparency is being brought in, a corruption-free government is being given, and governance is being given importance so that fundamental reforms are happening in this country. So, that will continue in this budget too.
That's the difference between a politician and a journalist. I see the glass as half full, you see half empty, you see it as half full. Let me be more specific though. While we talk of Startup India, and it's a great idea, the fact is, industrial production, the IIP numbers which have come out, last November, down to their lowest in 4 years, industrial production contracting to 3.2%, exports are down. There is still no revival in manufacturing of the kind that we would hope for. So, I mean, there are these contrary images. You're right, the economy is growing at 7% plus. We are the only economy in the world growing at that rate. That's reason to feel positive. But these are also concerns that without industrial production growing, without manufacturing going, where are you going to create the jobs? Your government promised 5 crore jobs to Indians in 5 years. We are a long way away from that, ma'am.
I agree. I agree there are very serious challenges. And that is why Make in India is a kind of initiative which is going to place a lot of emphasis for people to move on to being an entrepreneur and investing in India and doing business in India a bit more easier. These are all efforts which we probably will have to wait for the results. And I agree, manufacturing figures have not been comfortable, except of course December figures are slightly better than November's, which is not really completely a consolation, but we'll have to work on it. And yes, for continuous 13 months, exports have fallen. There's no hiding away from it. But let's be clear, the extraneous factors which are causing these are beyond anyone's control, and that's not just for India. Demand all over the globe is falling. Economies are contracting. Brazil is contracting 3 times, by 3 times or probably even by 4 times. Russia is contracting. Our traditional export areas are all suffering because of currency devaluation. So even if you are ultimately exporting in quantity terms the same amount, the realization is far lesser. And these are matters which we are very continuously monitoring. What are we doing about it? We are doing some things. Even yesterday I had discussion with the export promotion councils. If there are particular things which have to be done for particular sectors, to immediately give some kind of a respite from this situation. We are at it, but the global depression
is a long, painful process. Because, you know, I know it's unfair to raise this question perhaps, but in 2014, you know, we were promised Achhe Din. The fact is Achhe Din have still not come because of the failure to create jobs. Startup India, as I said, great idea. Make in India, we still have to see whether Make in India actually translates into Indian industry investing in India. The jury is still out on that. So I'm just wondering, is this going to be a long, painful grind that we should be prepared for? Maybe that you need to tell the young, because instead of raising expectations, maybe you need to give a reality check that, guys, the world, as you say, is contracting. Please be prepared for 2-3 more years of pain.
No, that's not the message I want to give the young. If I compare India of, let's say, even 10 years ago, or even longer, the message today for the young, and that's not a message I want to give, which you probably will sense it yourselves, and that is where the startup story is more than 50% out there and not with the government. The ecosystem has already been created. Youngsters have proven that they want to be entrepreneurs and they've started doing a lot of things. We are not pretending here to say that we are the ones who are going to create that, ecosystem. They are now understanding that they can do something on their own and also probably start giving jobs, even if it is 3, 4, 5 here, but they can do it themselves. I didn't have that opportunity when I was young. I had to think in terms of only, can I look for a job somewhere? Am I adequately qualified to get a job somewhere? I'm thankful today, the India that we are seeing, where the youngsters are now challenging established beliefs. Many middle-class youngsters have ideas and they want to prove for themselves, and we are saying as government, we'll facilitate that. We're not pretending that we want to lead you towards it. So that is where the Startup India is something where we are saying we'll facilitate the process. We recognize that the ecosystem has already been created purely because of the drive of youngsters. So the message, I'm not here to give a message. In fact, you've given a message. Please step back. Government, please step back. Government, make sure that you're not going to make more knots around us. If anything, remove the knots and make it easy. And that's why I think the Prime Minister was right in speaking the way he spoke, the kind of offer he's made that day when startup was launched. And therefore, I'm not here to give a message. I learn from the messages I'm getting from the youngsters who are going ahead with startups.
But will you actually then downsize government? Why do we need so many ministers? I mean, why do we need a minister for steel, ma'am, in 21st century India? I mean, there are various government departments where you don't, if you are serious, as you said, that's the message you're getting from younger India, have less government, then walk the talk. Please cut down ministries. Please get out of the hotel business. Please get out of the aviation business. Why do you need Air India? I mean, let's be clear, ma'am. You know, Mr. Modi came because he came to power as a change agent. He talks the talk. Will he walk the talk? Is my worry. I mean, why doesn't he just go out there and say, I am cutting half a dozen ministries? Otherwise, it will seem like rhetoric, man.
If I can give a lighter response first, allow me for it, and then of course I'll get back to giving a serious response. He said, why do you need a steel ministry? I wish he had said, why do you need a commerce? Because I'll have a flack coming from steel ministry saying, did you respond to that? Why do you need commerce minister? Commerce happens anyway.
Possibly.
Honestly, you would have been safer, I would have been safer if you had said that. But no, the answer I want to give your question is, I think the principle on which this government has come on board is to reduce the size of government, but don't compromise on governance. And that is why that, four-worded dicta, less government, more governance. I'm not going to choose the ministries which I want to cull out. Certainly not my business. But yes, there are activities in which the Prime Minister keeps saying, there are certainly activities in which government need not be present. And I'm sure and I'm glad to hear from the media, and gives me strength that if and when that happens, the media will not be against us, I'll take this message to the Prime Minister. I'll certainly take this message to the Prime Minister, and maybe this can be something which he can start off, because for the wonderful work that he has done in the last 2 years through various ministries, I'm not sure so much as credit has been given to him. At least if he starts this, we know we have friends wherever in the media.
Okay, so I can put a headline tomorrow. Nirmala Sitharaman says at SRCC Business Conclave, government ready to eliminate the Ministry of Steel.
No, correct yourself.
We don't need the...
Correct yourself. I said start with commerce, and I also said I'll carry the message to the Prime Minister.
Okay,
so
good.
That's your headline.
Okay, good. Ma'am, you spoke about the global situation, and there are serious problems that you face, particularly in exports, for example. On the other hand, the fact is that on decadal basis, oil prices are at an all-time low. And questions are being raised. I know Jayalalitha raised this only yesterday. Why is the benefit not being passed on to the consumer? Why is it, if you are going to say that oil prices should be market-driven, if the oil prices are coming down globally, pass it down to the consumer. Then don't bring in a duty structure, because you also need to bring in your monies. Just pass it on to the consumer.
There are 2 or 3 different arguments which I have to give as answers to this. It's not as if the government has never passed the benefits on. If there have been 11 times drop in the price, at least 8 different times the benefits have been passed on to the consumer. Yes, government has raised duties on. And the explanation given for it is, where do I fund my public infrastructure expenditure from otherwise? The total number of people paying taxes, I'm talking of direct taxes, is not more than 35 million in this country. The tax net has to be widened. How many people can be brought on board within a year or 2 to pay taxes? And where do you create the resources from, if eventually also that we have to bring down corporate taxes? You also have to encourage businesses, and therefore you want to make sure that you're not overtaxing them. Where does the revenue come from? And therefore, if 8 out of 10 times we have passed on the benefits to the customers. And there are reasons why we have to raise that little revenue from or through these duties which are being levied. We as citizens should also think about how it is possible otherwise to raise revenue, one. Second, we were also told, oh my God, international price is this, whereas India's price is this. You know the way in which oil is procured. It is procured at a particular price in advance and then you store it. And oil marketing companies are independent to price themselves. And if they procured at a price, whereas today's price is different, you can't expect them, and simple economics would say, look, I bought it at that price, but you're expecting me to sell that stock at a different price which is far lower than the price at which I bought it. It's no economics. So let's understand, there are of course very genuine requests that the price has to come down, and it has been passed on as many number of times as I said. But it's not as if we've completely kept away the benefits from reaching the consumers. We should please place it in proper context. Also, if the central government is raising a certain quantum as tax, states are also raising through a certain quantum of tax by the taxation that they impose at the local level. And from the central taxation, if let's say I'm raising 19 rupees as tax, nearly 8 rupees is given back to the states from the tax that I collect, tax revenue that I collect from the fuel prices. So that money goes back to the states too. So if there are chief ministers who are saying, no, you're not passing the benefit comes in an indirect way. If I've raised, let's say if the price is about 58 rupees, I'm raising about 19 rupees as central taxation. Of the 19, 8 rupees nearly goes back to the states. And the states themselves are raising nearly 11 rupees in that 58 that we're talking about. So from the state's own ways of raising tax, they receive 11, and here am I adding 8 to it. So eventually the money goes back to the states. It's not as if the center is taking it all for itself.
Let me ask you a big question that should concern, I think, concern all of us, including in the media. This political gridlock. There's a parliament session that's about to come. We've had 2 wasted parliament sessions. The monsoon session more or less washed out, the winter session frozen. The question now is, you've got important legislation like the goods and services tax. It's been pending now for years. Is there any possibility of Sonia Gandhi, Mulayam Singh Yadav, Mamata Banerjee, Narendra Modi, whoever you want, sitting across a table, having breakfast with each other and putting the country above their personal interests? Do you really see our politicians putting national interest above political interest to ensure that critical legislation is passed in this country or not? Or do you believe it's not going to happen, that there is so much of bitterness in our politics that they will not even sit and have breakfast with each other?
No, sitting together and having breakfast, we are not against. We'll do that.
But getting legislation passed, ma'am?
This question, Rajdeep, I'm sure you'll have SRCC facilitating you to have a session with the Congress leader too. This is, I'm sure you would like to do it. So, the hitch is not with the NDA. And I'm sure the hitch is not even with many other parties which are present in the Lok Sabha or in the Rajya Sabha. The hitch, is probably with 1 or 2 parties. We'll have breakfast with all of them, but you ensure that they pass the GST.
How am I to ensure, ma'am? It's for
By
you.
asking this question.
No, that's my
By
worry.
asking this question.
No, I'll tell you what the bigger worry is. We are running out of, this is a great opportunity. We have a demographic dividend, a young country, but we have the next 5 or 10 years to get it right. But in India, core legislation takes much longer. The insurance bill was brought in by Yashwant Sinha. It finally got passed when Jayant Sinha, his son, became a minister. It took about 15 years. And when you're in the opposition, you oppose it. When you're in the government, you support it. It's as much true of your party as it is true of the Congress. I'm just wondering now, my original question, do you believe, and I'm asking you this as a bipartisan, not necessarily, you don't have to wear your BJP hat, do our politicians realize that the time has come that this same young India is asking the question, when will our netas put national interest above their personal interest, above their political interest? When will you put India above politics, is what I'm asking. Is that going to happen in my lifetime? I'm getting old, ma'am.
I'm getting very worried that this is getting very personal and emotional. So I don't know how to respond. I will give a dispassionate answer. We're certainly at a juncture where we cannot afford to waste any more time in partisan politics, particularly when it comes to certain critical legislation. And that is where I'm glad the finance minister is engaging with the Congress party and other parties too. And that's where my hope lies. And I'm sure the same young India, which has an opportunity to interact with all political parties, and I'm not shifting the blame to you, we shall keep ourselves available and accessible, and we shall have breakfast or lunch and we'll sit with them to understand where the questions and concerns are. And we are willing to yield wherever it is possible without, as the finance minister says, without affecting the very nature of the bill. If you're going to make the bill itself something which you can't implement, that may not be possible to yield. I mean, that particular condition may not be possible to be yielded to. But certainly that which is accommodatable, we are willing to work on. So with that, I would hope reason would prevail and the sense of timing that India cannot wait any longer would be clearly weighing down on the Congress's shoulder. And we hope to work with them. And I'll keep my fingers crossed and I'm hopeful that we'll pass the bill.
So it will be passed in the budget session.
I would like to.
You're hopeful that it will be passed in the budget session. Okay, that's a positive note on which to conclude this part. I want to open it up to questions because I think what you need to know is what they feel. And maybe we'll take questions from the audience. So if anyone has a question, just raise your hand and I'm sure there are mics around which you can use. Please go ahead. Yes, there's a hand out there. Please go ahead. Do you have a mic? Either you have a mic or a very loud voice. Is there a mic?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All the initiatives for Startup India are for encouraging entrepreneurs. Why is encouraging startups so important and how will it affect our economy?
First thing, it is important for the economy because you have a very aspirational young India, which also is saying that we have talent, we know how to go about something. And they've already proven it, and that's where the ecosystem is already prevalent. The Prime Minister has had this thought that the young India and its capability will have to be, the whole discussion about demographic dividend is that if their capabilities are not exploited, and if they are not given an opportunity, we'll miss out. And that is why it is important that we go along with what the young have proven from their side. And that's why startup, and that's why the government is coming the way in which it is coming.
But I think the worry is that Startup India cannot just be confined to technology-driven apps. It cannot be confined to a few areas. You know, SMEs are suffering. Small and medium enterprises are struggling at the moment. That is the reality. So while we talk of Startup India, my worry is this a bubble out there? There are other key areas that also need government support.
Well, every startup is going to be an SME. Startups are not big-scale industries. At the same time, if you mean
existing SMEs.
No, if you mean about when you say SME, if you're trying to tell me that non-technological ones are the SMEs, no, SMEs also are technologically involved. But let's be clear here, we are not confining startups only to technology and app-based activities. Any idea which gets scaled up and which can take a commercial dimension to it is a startup for me. And that is why innovation-based hubs are all being created. Science and technology is going to play a big role. Biotechnology is going to have its space there. Even if you're doing something which is going to help the space sector, space industry, ISRO related, we are welcoming this. Or if you're just doing something in the retail world with some novelty in it, we are open to it. So it is not just confined to technology or app-based activities.
Okay. Yes. Yes, here in the front.
As we know, the WTO is not very good. And as we know, that the transatlantic peaceful partnership are going on between the nations and between the continents. So how should we respond to this?
Hi, can you run it through me first?
We are living in code.
Can you run it through me first? Yes, we are new.
Well, yes, we recognize there are a lot of plurilateral agreements, whether it's TPP or the TTIP, which is yet to come through. Even the TPP has got to be ratified by all those signatories. India believes in a multilateral trading system, which is the WTO, but we are not keeping ourselves out of any plurilateral trading agreements. That is why we are actively engaging in the RCEP, which is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which includes all the Southeast ASEAN countries, Southeast Asian, plus a few others. As regards its impact on India's trade, we are just not confining to that one particular plurilateral discussion that we are holding. We are in negotiation with a few countries where we can have free trade agreements, whether it is with Australia or with the European Union or even with Canada. There are free trade agreements being worked out. Over and above this, with countries which are a party to the TPP, we are, in order to exploit the rules of origin which comes into play when the TPP will come into force, we are making sure that our manufacturers can go and invest in countries which are part of the TPP so that they can benefit from that access they will otherwise obtain because of TPP.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Take the mic. There's a mic now. Oh, you want to use the mic? Yeah, go ahead and then we'll come then. Yeah, you've got the mic. Use it. Use it. Go ahead, ma'am.
I just want to talk about the 68% population of India. Is there anything for rural India in a startup? If I'm saying for the policies, there were so many policies, Make in India, Startup, Jan Dhan Mudra. There were policies, they are implemented, but there is no checkup on that. In reality, if we see that is the real people are benefited for that, what about the peoples that are not educated? Even if I think, if I'm correct, 67% of our generation is educated. We are all talking about 32%. What about the people that are living in rural area?
Okay,
Is there anything for startup and all that?
Okay, you made your point. What is there for rural India? Hand the mic there, ma'am. You want to respond to that?
Well, I don't think we have excluded rural India. The hubs which are all being formed, the innovation creating incubators are not centered just in Bangalore or in Noida or in Delhi. They're going to be all over India. The innovation centers or the incubators are going to be in postgraduate institutions. They're not just going to be in colleges in Delhi, they're going to be in different districts too. So we are not ignoring rural India. Again, with startup, you would have heard also some other expression, stand up. Stand up India is going to be something which the Prime Minister will formally launch, but it is a program where through the bank branches, which exist in, they are in total about 1,25,000 of them all over the country, in some remote parts also, through each of the branch, it is expected that at least one SC or ST or a woman would be supported for starting their own enterprises. And that is purely aiming at rural, purely aiming at sections which are otherwise eliminated in these processes. So if SC, ST and women are going to get covered through the stand-up, where is the, you're ignoring 60%? Not at all.
1 minute. Yes, ma'am, the girl there. Go ahead, yes.
So we are all aware this is a technology-driven generation. But I think a lot of people who cannot afford to give a voice to people like farmers. I mean, thousands every year die and they're not getting their one-time meal, let alone food on our table for us. So my question to you is, how do you, what policies have you adopted to bring some relief to farmers who are battling, crop failure and all that?
There are 2 or 3 different things which I can say here. Based on the crop, a minimum support price is given to farmers. So those farmers who really cannot get the best of market prices, for whatever reason, will be benefiting through a minimum support price given for their crop. That is one thing. You may say that existed for a very long time, but what is the relief? The second, this is for the first time in the country, because most farmers need supply of urea. Every crop season, from different parts of the country, you would have heard, oh, there is no urea reaching in this area, as a result of which farmers are standing in long queues. Sometimes there is also violence because they don't get it. Police get into, quelling a mob which gets violent. This is the first time in the country. Not one chief minister wrote to the Prime Minister saying, we don't have fertilizers or urea reaching my state. There is a terrible shortage, and as a result of which farmers are suffering. Not one. We ensured timely distribution of urea. We've also ensured that urea which gets diverted, because it's a very important component for farmers. Urea which gets diverted for non-agricultural purposes have all been stopped, because we are now supplying urea with a neem coating to it. No neem coated urea can be of use anywhere except in farms. So as a result, every urea that comes into this country, every urea that is manufactured in this country is now purely aimed at agriculture, as a result of which there has not been a shortage. Every farmer could access urea in time. Third and most important, whether it is sugarcane farmer, any benefit which is given to the farmer. For instance, sugarcane farmers, we gave 4 rupees 50 paisa per kg of cane produced for the farmer in addition to the price that he receives. And that money did not go to the mills. It went directly to the account of the farmer through direct benefit transfer. Because there's the Jan Dhan Yojana ke dwara, every farmer has got an account. The money directly went to the farmer. And that measure is comparable for one other measure where I will say farm workers are very much influenced. From 1st April 2016, the Manrega workers, the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, which has a lot of marginal landless workers, but never mind also farming related workers. Their payments will go directly to their account from 1st April 2016, so that not one person can say, what I'm expected to get, I'm not getting. Some dalal is eating in between the money, so total amount in cash will reach his account. Finally, the insurance scheme which the Prime Minister planned and was executed, in order that crop insurance reaches farmer, every farmer, and that because of crop loss, for instance, this morning too there was a discussion on how farmers who had pulses grown, entire eastern UP and Bihar and areas like that, their crops have been damaged because of Nilgai, the animal which is in the wild, and as a result quite a few farmers have lost their crop. But pulse is very important, and you're going to have a reduction in crop because of that. But never mind, whichever be the reason, whether it is unseasonal rain, whether it is drought, whether it is any other fall in price, if the insurance is given to the farmer, he is not going to suffer because of such fluctuations. So very good comprehensive insurance plan has been launched for the sake of the farmers. So if you're talking of farmers and their welfare, you might say, what is there in the name? Even the ministry, Agriculture Ministry, is now called Ministry for Agriculture and Farmers Welfare now, because we mean it.
I didn't want to intervene. I mean, as journalists, of course, the fact is that there have been a lot of, that the number of farmer suicides in the last 12 months clearly reflect that there is a problem of agrarian distress. And it's interesting you use the word Manrega, because when you were in the opposition, you were criticizing the Congress for bringing in Manrega. This is precisely my point. And once you come to government, you suddenly realize, and Jairam Ramesh has written a piece yesterday on 10 years of Manrega, where he says the government is actually cutting back on Manrega and is actually pulling the wool over the eyes of the people of the country because you're not actually ensuring that the kind of funding that Manrega needs goes to the farmer.
No, but it's shocking. I mean, when we are in the opposition, you're beaten for one thing. When you come to power, you're beaten for some other thing. But that's the media. I don't mind that. But the fact is, if I praise Manrega today, I do it because I ensure that it is effectively implemented. There are no leakages. The money allotted goes actually to the beneficiary and nobody else. With due respects to Jairam Ramesh, if he had taken care of these when he was the minister concerned, the same program would have been better received by us. They could have defended themselves much better. Leave me from the opposition. After all, my comments on Manrega when I was in the opposition was not just from my, they were not off the cuff remarks. They were based on CAG's observation. The CAG came down heavily for poor implementation. So it's all right to have a fancy idea, but if you don't have the capability to implement, which we have now, I think the approach is different.
Okay, let me get two last questions. One in the back and one in the front. Yeah, go ahead. And then one at the back. It would be unfair not to have someone. Yeah, the boy there after that. Yes, ma'am.
Hello ma'am, good afternoon. It is indeed an honor to listen to you this August afternoon. My question is, you'd recently tweeted that only 9% are women startup entrepreneurs in India. So what do you think is the biggest challenge that they face, and how is the government trying to pull off the graph? Thank you so much.
You may not like my answer, but I'll say this. I think women hesitate. And other than the personal lack of drive, which I don't say is the feature with every woman, many women probably will have to get over that. Many families do support, but also, like the Prime Minister said in his Independence Day speech, we tell women to be careful, we tell women to be returning home in a certain time, but we don't give the same advice to the boys. Similarly, the encouragement given to boys, similar encouragement should also be given to girls. Now, I for one have had the benefit of such a family which said, no difference, you should, in any case I don't have brothers, so the family had no choice. They had to push me to do whatever I wanted to do. But the fact remains that if that kind of encouragement is given, I'm sure girls will not stop at being at 9%, they would probably equally compete, if not excel boys.
But do you think women make better, in your experience, do women make better politicians? Do they make better entrepreneurs than men?
Both. I think wherever women are, they create a conducive environment for both men and women to work happily. There's no, exclusion there.
You're suggesting men exclude women, right? Okay. Let's get the question last. Yes, the boy there. Yeah, go ahead. You have a mic?
Knowing the importance of the GST bill, can't we have the ordinance route or joint sitting of Rajya Sabha or of Parliament so that this important bill can be passed? Because if this bill isn't passed in the next 1 or 2 fiscal years, I think so it will have major implications on the Indian economy.
Right, but GST is such a bill where you need a constitutional amendment and a passing therefore with 2/3 majority.
He's talking of a joint session.
No, joint session, wait a minute, now this is a constitutional bill. And therefore, first of all, it should have that approval or a rejection. Neither is happening. And again, for a bill like GST, leave the ordinance, leave anything. Why shouldn't it get the approval? Why shouldn't it have that approval from the 2/3 of the House? Why should the government be pushed to say, should I consider an ordinance? Not for the GST. It's something on which all states, inclusive of Congress-ruled states, have favored. And people do realize what impact it's going to have on our GDP. A very conservative estimate says nearly 1.5% to 2% growth will be added to our GDP. Don't we all want it? Can this be a bill on which we are sitting on egos?
It's very interesting, no ma'am, when Narendra Modi ji was Gujarat Chief Minister, he used to oppose GST. Now he's driving it. Again, I'm coming back to it. This is really what concerns me. That somewhere this kind of politics is going to have to end if we really have to achieve what we, if we talk of double-digit growth in this country, it's not about Congress growth versus BJP growth. It has to be the Indian growth story. I'm just leaving that as an aside.
Yeah,
Since
because-
you are going to take our messages to the Prime
No, no.
Minister, please take that also.
No, because he doesn't want my reply on it.
Okay.
Only as a thought.
Yeah, go
for
ahead.
me to
No,
get-
no, you can, but that is the reality. The Prime Minister, when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat, was seen as one of those who was obstructing the GST negotiations. Doing exactly what the BJP did to GST when you were in the opposition. And that's the tragedy of this country.
The only difference is Narendra Modi was never addressed as to what his concerns are, and did the UPA government at that time call him for a tea?
But that is exactly
he-
what the
did
UPA
he-
says today.
Today we have called them for a tea.
But they say you don't address their concerns.
See, you can go on adding to the list. First you said you don't call them. They were called by nobody other than the Prime Minister himself. And then you say, no, that wasn't a written list. Give us it, give the whatever demands in written. And then you say, no, there are 3 other conditions. You keep changing the milepost. If I were to, because you compared, if I were to compare,
Okay.
Modi was not even called at that time. If anything, Modi, you remain in Gujarat and we'll create more trouble for you, but you don't come to Delhi was the approach.
Okay, we must end at 1:30, so I'll just give one last question. Yes. Yeah, whoever, yes, the ladies get first preference, sorry.
Thank you, sir. Sir, so we as youngsters, we think that the other parliaments are much more effective than our Indian parliament. So how can we put faith in you and your party to change the world, to change India and look for a better future?
No, first thing I want to let you know is, no. Don't you think that we are the worst in parliament? There are countries, I don't even want to take the example of the way in which those parliaments run. We are anytime much better, but we can be even better. I agree.
Ma'am, let me be honest, and I think we can conclude with this. Isn't it true that our system has broken? I hear from MLAs of how thekas are given to favored thekedars, whether they are in Congress or BJP. So unless you know the local politician, you don't get the theka. Even today, whether we like it or not, there is cronyism in the way business is done. Your government is talking of Startup India, great. You want to project entrepreneurial capitalism. For the longest time, this country has promoted crony capitalism. You now want to move out of it, but the system has broken. How are you going to fix a system? You've only been in power 2 years. Is your worry, ma'am, that the Prime Minister needs more time and that we as young people, and I'm using we here as young people, we want a T20 match. We want the government to play a T20 match because we want things to be done instantly. Is the problem that our system is so badly broken that it's going to take 10 years, 20 years before actually this system is fixed?
Few things, sir. This is a running battle between me and Rajdeep, so I'll continue it here. I'm sure you will accommodate it. This attempt to equate BJP with the Congress every time. You were like this, they
No,
were
I didn't
also like
equate
this.
you now. I'm saying the system is broken.
Tekadari, MLAs, whether it's Congress MLAs or
Yeah.
BJP MLAs. No way. We have, in the last 2 years, shown that corruption-free government is possible. Don't you please equate us with you.
You're saying to me, ma'am, are you saying to me that BJP MLAs in states like Chhattisgarh, earlier in Uttarakhand, even in Gujarat, have not taken contracts for money? Are you saying they are corruption free?
All right, now you extend the debate, stretch it, change the milepost,
No, I'm not.
whatever it. Don't you? I mean, this is a typical
In Jharkhand,
media methodology.
I'll tell
You
you-
answered something, oh no, she's answered me on
No,
this. Let
no,
me move on to
ma'am,
something. No.
I'll give you. I met a journalist the other day in Ranchi. He was giving me a rate card. A rate card. You have a government in Jharkhand. A rate card about how thekas are being given in Jharkhand at the moment. They're all being given to preferred people. The same people were given by the Congress government which was in power in Jharkhand. That's the reality of this country. Now I am therefore asking you, is the Prime Minister going to fix these problems or will
Now
these
it comes to the
problems
Prime
persist?
Minister. Huh? Now it comes to the Prime
He's
Minister
the boss.
again.
He's the boss.
Therefore, Rajdeep, let's be clear. Just because we have to, in the media, appear as being objective, neutral, we don't favor any one party, we will not even say the truth about a party is not possibly going to be left unaddressed. We will address it. You continue it, but we will address it. One thing. Second, yes, I will not, one thing, before I say yes, I don't agree to this argument that systems have completely broken down. No, they may be badly shaken. They may be infested with many problems. But that is exactly where time will be consumed in cleaning them up, in making them transparent. And that is why decisions which are not attractive, which are not glamorous, are being taken now. What is this whole thing about e-procurement? What is this whole thing about let's go on the net? Look at the way in which coal was distributed. Coal allocations were made. Was there one finger pointed out at the government? No. And that is why using technology to bring transparency in the process, which is what we are working with state governments also, so that in governance there is a greater sense of transparency. And that's what exactly, like the way you came back, Mr. Modi is in charge now. Is he doing it? Yes, he is doing it. And he is not doing it just at the center, he is doing it even with the states. Not imposing on them, but taking them on board. The cooperative federalism.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Nirmala Sitharaman.